People today make decisions so quickly that makes us hinder our ability to focus. Nowadays, people tend to be quick to form judgments without being able to experience. The answer is simple. We focus too much on the now. In a world where modernization and development are very rampant, everything is done with speed. Well, yeah, we are in fact in the present moment. We follow what's trending, what's acceptable to the standards of social media, what looks good. But we forget to romanticize the past and the future. And focusing too much on the now, we become too performative, too soft, too reliant. And right now, it's getting out of hand. By not waiting to see how capable a leader is, not allowing ideas to mature, not giving people a chance to reveal who they are over time. People choose based on labels, anticipating instead of evaluating. We become too demanding. That's why we become too performative. Walter Mischel talks about this in psychology, that humans are impatient by nature. But in this day and age, impatience becomes a lifestyle. It's like we're locked into the now, and we rely on these heuristic shortcuts. Here we can talk about stereotypes, first impressions, emotions, what friends believe, what social media rewards. Because these shortcuts promises certainty. They make us feel like we already know enough, even if we don't. Somehow it traps you to a constant gratification. And so, without realizing it, we start designing ourselves for the moment, filtering who we are through what we believe people want to see right now. And in that process, we kind of lose touch with our deeper values or long-term growth. We become these curated versions of ourselves, always reacting, never fully becoming who we could be. Especially that we are faced with constant digital stimulation, instant feedback, and the need for immediate results. There's this constant rush to have an opinion, to react, to perform for an audience. So we end up skimming life instead of diving in. Why don't we try to pause? We reflect and assess the person. Looking back at it, for this part, I think it's making me agree with most philosophers who says this is the death of critical thinking. A lot of videos online talk about the death in different ways.
Why does it feel like, in a time where we can more readily access the truth, we've only become far more divided?
But the more important question is,
because ultimately, I think we may be approaching the whole topic of critical thinking in the wrong way.
But I interpret the death in another aspect, which is our straying to the assessment of our fellow people. Like we surrender our capability to know others more deeper and more meaningful. I see it as a deeper loss of self. We lose our capacity for genuine reflection and the idea of our sense of purpose. Actually, Aristotle revealed something called the final cause, from the Greek term telos. This, he said, is central to understanding the world. He believed that everything in nature has a purpose, or an end toward which it naturally aims. We can learn more about this in his quote, "A good knife cuts because its purpose is cutting." Now, translating that to our aspect is saying, interpretation is good when it serves its intended function. For example, revealing themes and the clarity of meaning. What I'm trying to say, just as Aristotle showed us, is bringing clarity and uncovering the truth. We get to bring back our sense of purpose, like to know others more deeply. We can now get to think and reflect, because in the process of losing ourselves, we also lose such friendships. Since that we are no longer thinking, we are now adrift, unmoored from our own ends and those of the relationships we build. In that sense, I think we degrade Aristotle's idea of friendship, and it's losing the ability to see one another. Rather than engaging with each other's complexities, we settle for less, and in doing so, we surrender something richer. Also, a major factor which I've already talked about in this channel, and I'll say it again, it's how people succumb to confirmation bias and sometimes prejudice. And yeah, here epistemology at its core is about how we come to know things, what counts as knowledge, what we can trust. So when critical thinking dies, epistemology warns us that we lose the tools to differentiate belief from justified knowledge. Without that, we're left with a fragile sense of certainty. We stop asking how we know, and we stop guarding against superficial or performative thinking. Critical thinking is not about agreeing with everything. It's about remaining open to the possibility that you might be wrong and seeking a more compatible or complete picture. So, start asking more questions. To further grasp the now, here is an example given. Not so long ago, a while back, other Catholics prefer someone progressive rather than a traditional one.
Peter's eyes are falling.
Here we are.
There we are.
Pope Basilica.
Very special moment.
Very special moment.
And,
Here he is. The waving.
Big
The
smiles.
smiles.
How amazing.
How amazing.
And Dr. Liz Love was also talking about sacrificial role, and that is the symbol of the cloth that he's wearing right now.
Pope Leo the 14th.
Pope Leo the 14th.
Amazing. Smiling.
A smiling
And
Pope, yes.
you can see who wouldn't be taken by the moment and
I think going
overcome
through
with
his
emotion.
mind.
This they can say without having yet experienced the capabilities of the Pope and what he can do. Do you get it? Preferences are shaped by collective fears and expectations to or for the modern culture more than any actual experience. It's a matter of perception and anticipatory judgment. Edmund Husserl did discuss anticipation as part of perception. For him, anticipation is a key part of how we perceive. He argued that when we experience something, we just don't passively take in isolated data. Instead, we anticipate future aspects of that experience. In other words, perception is always forward-looking, or rather, looking forward. We expect what we will soon encounter. In that respect, I get where Catholics are coming from. Moving on, another philosopher also has a say to this. 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant developed a broad theory of judgment. In his book, The Critique of Judgment, he shows that all experience is shaped by a priori categories, like causality and substance. So our mind actively organizes sensory input. In short, for Kant, judgment synthesizes raw data by applying innate concepts. So taken together, we see how often our preferences often end up being guided by what we anticipate, and sometimes not what we consciously choose. Now, we can conclude that people prefer not based on what the Pope has done, but on what they fear and hope he will do. Here on out, in the contemporary and modern setting, people gravitate toward what feels familiar or aligns with their values. German philosopher Max Scheler developed a material ethics of values. Scheler argued that our choices are guided by a hierarchy of values. What holds to be most valuable, even if it's not fully conscious. Us humans fear so much about uncertainty. Just like in Shakespeare's Hamlet, the fear of uncertainty paralyzes action. Hamlet hesitates again and again because he can't be sure. How about being in a paralysis of action? We are paralyzed to perform authentically. This I have thought about because we are performing on a stage, because Hamlet is a play, right? So you have to perform. Hamlet, in his hesitation, is a symbol of how our fear of the unknown keeps us passive And in that passivity, we lose ourselves, our capacity to perform. We then need to consider things discerningly, because humans mistake confidence for competence. We always anticipate and not investigate. Now, this is where we rationalize and philosophize being performative. We've now reached the part where we look deeper. We understand the core, the context, and the literal meaning. And also what lies behind. Let me first start with my theory. We are all performative. You may be one, you just don't know it. As we go through this video, you should have noticed it by now. The subtle hints. Anyway, it's to that degree that we become performative to shape and dictate other persons. You may have encountered minor criticism in which everyone, well, of course, not everyone, thinks that everything, or like some parts that they do, is performative, like too performative. But isn't being performative also has its good side? In order to know, you have to first delve onto the origin and literal meaning of the word performative, and how it has been killed by social media. Earliest translations come from the word French performer or performer, which means to carry out, to complete. And it also has Latin roots, which is per, meaning through, and formare, which is to form or and shape. Originally, it pertains to carry something into effect, like to enact, to bring into reality through action. The term became philosophically important through John Longshaw Austin, a 20th century British philosopher of language. In his book, How to Do Things with Words, Austin explained that some statements don't just describe reality, they create reality. If you say, I apologize, I promise, I declare you husband and wife, these are called performative utterances. Language or action brings about a change in reality. Later thinkers expanded the idea. Like Judith Butler argued that identity itself is performative. For example, gender isn't something you are. He explained that it is something repeatedly performed through behavior, dress, speech, and norms. Meaning, we construct identity through repeated acts. Disclaimer, this is just a social theory. But now using that, we can say that yes, in theory, we are all performative because identity is enacted socially. Now here's where things shifted. On social media, performative began to mean doing something only for appearance, validation, or moral signaling. Like drinking matcha, reading a Jane Austen book, sharing such posts, sharing such social issues. But notice something here. This new meaning assumes intention, and intention is invisible. So when someone says you're just being performative, what they're really saying is, quote unquote, I believe your motive is not authentic. That's a judgment of interiority, which we cannot always verify. So, are we all performative? In one sense, yes, because we choose what to show, and we present ourselves socially to acting differently in different contexts. Even being natural is a form of social performance. Socialist Irving Goffman wrote about this in The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. He argued that everyday interaction is theatrical. There is a front stage, which is your public self. And there is a backstage, which is now your private self. He pertains that we are always managing impressions. So the real question is not, are you performative? But rather, is the performance aligned with your values? See the change in the use of language? Sometimes people call something performative Not because it's fake, but because it makes them uncomfortable. Now, the darker side is this: using performative as a weapon. People become performative to shape, dictate, and judge others. Calling someone performative can itself be performative. It can signal, I see through you. I'm more authentic. I'm not like that. It becomes a moral superiority move. Ironically, accusing someone of being performative can be a performance of discernment. So what is it really? Philosophically speaking, we are all socially performative, but we are not all inauthentic. Performance as expression, and only the person themselves fully knows the intention. Here's the catch. A guy drinks matcha, listens to music, reads Jane Austen, and possible interpretations are that he genuinely enjoys it. He enjoys the aesthetic. He wants to attract someone. He wants to be perceived a certain way. But here's the key. Even if he partly wants to be perceived, that doesn't cancel sincerity. Humans are rarely pure in motive. We all know that. We act with mixed intentions. But, let's resist the lazy usage of the word. That's what I'm advocating for. Because when people say everything is performative, what they might mean is everything is socially visible. Well, visibility is not hypocrisy. With the help of my centrosophy, maybe the synthesis here is authenticity and performance are not opposites. Authenticity can be performed. Performance can contain the truth. For today's video, we discussed about performance, how we become too performative, and how we focus too much on the now. We focused such thinkers like Immanuel Kant, Edmund Husserl, Max Scheler, and other more. We've discussed the literal meaning and origin of the word performative, and that our language becomes a reality. In a sense, we are all performative, but sometimes those performances are authentic or sincere. So I think we just don't have to always judge other people. And sometimes being performative to the point of being too weird brings about a good thing in society and as a person, because those are aspects that we cannot control, because those are instilled in other people, and perhaps that's who they are, and that's who they want to be. Now let me leave you with a quote from Kung Fu Panda. Master Oogway teaches us that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present, and there are no accidents. And that's the good part, and that means that you are the master of your own destiny. No one and nothing can come in between you and your destiny except you. Well, yeah, I'm Ernests Gerard, and I'll see you on the next one.